So I would say the most important thing someone can do really in any time, but especially now, is to make sure their site is well built and structurally sound from a technical standpoint so it has a good user experience.
Welcome to the Winning E-Commerce Experience Show, where it's all about creating a brand that your customers love so they keep coming back. This show is brought to you by DataQ. Your store experience begins with your homepage. DataQ improves your conversion rate up to 30% by showing each visitor a personalized homepage based on their interest. And now, your host, Shahram Anver.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode. Today, we have the founder of AcerSEO. It's a digital marketing agency that specializes in optimizing inbound marketing efforts. Richard Garvey, great to have you on the show.
Hey, Shahram, how's it going? How are you feeling today?
I've been better.
Hopefully you don't have fever.
It's pretty crazy times, huh, that we're in.
Yeah, it's absolutely the unprecedentedly crazy times, I would say.
I mean, we were just talking about this a while ago, and we started getting to know each other. And you've been in this industry for a while now. Like, can you even think about a similar event that's happened that you can think of that's been this sort of groundbreaking? Or I know that's not a great word, but like such a big change.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been in the industry for almost a decade. I've been alive for almost 30 years. I've looked at the history of the last 100 years, and I don't think there's outside of maybe the Spanish flu, nothing really of this impact has ever hit the country, I would say, or the world. Because even when the market crashed in 2008, it was because the economy crashed, but people could still work, and now people are literally unable to work. They're not allowed to work. So it's unbelievable times we're in.
And the really weird thing is that all the stuff that like you think about that makes us so different from the time of the Spanish flu, like how interconnected we are and like how you get information at the, split second. It's actually kind of making things worse in a way because you just have so much information and so much of it is bad that I can imagine it's having like a pretty big toll on how people feel right now, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, and there's different different demographics are impacted differently, and people are. It's very weird because for people probably like me and you, we're healthy, we're in a nice space, we're working from home, so hey, it's not so bad. But there's also 3 million people that lost their jobs this week, which is completely unprecedented, and these times are just so chaotic that it's hard to predict anything that's going to happen.
I know. So let's just start with like getting everybody introduced to who you are. Like, can you tell us a little bit about Acer and your origin story? Like, how you tell us a little bit about the 10 years.
Yeah. So I've been in marketing for a long time, and for most of that time, I was a general marketer, just trying to really soak up everything I could. I was working primarily in the B2B space, so I was in manufacturing and publishing and the moving industry, and like we were talking about earlier, the commonality with all those industries is generally there was a really, really small marketing budget. So we were trying to generate organic traffic. So I was writing blogs, and I eventually stumbled upon SEO, just really trying to learn how to get more traffic to our sites. And when I started doing the things I was learning about, it started to work, which was exciting and cool. So a few years went by, and I started writing some SEO guides myself and becoming an expert in the field. And some friends and family members started asking for help for their businesses and referring me to their friends. And one thing led to another, and results kept coming in. So I eventually just said, hey, I can just do this. And that's when AcerSEO was officially born, and we started bringing on clients that way.
Wow. I mean, that sounds like almost like the perfect story where you hit on something that you like and you're doing it, and then people were just organically asking you to do more for them. And then you just figured, hey, like I could actually do this for a living. That's pretty cool. Well done.
And it's incredibly fortunate now in this time when the market's crashing that I was able to grow organically at a very controlled pace. So now my overhead is not very high, and then we're seeing some impact on our side with clients, but I don't have a ton of debt from growing too fast, and was able to really weather this storm as well as I could.
That's great. But I mean, now that we, so you mentioned you've got all these clients, and we were just talking about how crazy these times are.
Yeah.
Like, how are they actually thinking about it? Like right now, I guess people listening in are just going to be very worried. I'd say that would be probably the dominant emotion right now. So, how have you been talking to your clients about how to deal with this and like how to think about it?
So everything is changing so fast and it's so hard to predict. But from the data I'm seeing on my end, from the e-commerce side,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there is a slight downturn in traffic and revenue from retailers because people are they're shopping online more, but there's so much uncertainty that people are being a little cautious. But it's nowhere near the degree of in-person stores and places like hospitality and travel that are just getting absolutely crushed. So
Mm.
big caveat for retail though is that someone needs to produce and ship the products. So some companies have halted their online orders altogether because they're just unable to fill them. But for my clients, I'm just really telling them that it's important to understand your industry. So have an acute understanding of how it's being impacted and what you can do.
Mm.
So if you're in an industry that's thriving right now, like you're seeing people in grocery stores need supplies, subscription services are all going up.
Yeah.
If you're in one of those essential industries, now it's time to really double and triple down on your marketing efforts. If you aren't, which is most companies, they're trying to cut costs, and I felt it from my clients, and you may have as well. I'm doing
Yeah.
it myself. If you're not looking to cut costs right now, it's probably a mistake. But the catch-22 is that for marketing and SEO, it's really more important now than ever because the market is going to come back for businesses and for
Mm-hmm.
retail. Especially if the stimulus package kicks in and people are getting a check from the government for $1,200 or whatever it ends up being, they're going to spend it. So once they cover their essential needs, they're going to be buying clothes, they're going to be buying shoes, they're going to be buying what these businesses are selling. So the sites need to be ready. So that's what I'm really preaching to my clients is that if you can't afford it, that's fine. It's not something that it's absolutely critical to outsource. You can do it yourself and probably keep some of them in a building, but it's really, really important to keep your marketing efforts going during this time.
So when you say cut costs, I mean, I'm sure it obviously depends on where you are and things like that. But generally, would you say that people shouldn't get too aggressive with cutting costs on marketing and probably try to focus on other areas that they can cut costs on? Or like how would you actually approach that in terms of which areas you'd prioritize for cutting costs if you had to cut costs?
It's tough. So it's for me, I understand that it's such a big opportunity for marketing, especially SEO, since it takes a little bit while to build up. So once you optimize your site now,
Yeah.
if the market comes back in a couple months, or even quickly, you can turn around and people can find your site versus finding your competitors. And this time, they're going to be searching. It's
Mhm.
important, but the number one priority for these businesses has to be, making payroll and paying their employees that they're working with every day. So when people say they need to cut agencies and third parties, I understand, but I would do everything I could to keep the marketing efforts going as much as you could.
That makes sense. Especially because I mean, a lot of the stuff which you do online marketing wise, it's also kind of long term, right? I mean, you talked about doing inbound, and that means generating, say, content now, which hopefully pays off in like 90 days, right? So whatever you cut now wouldn't hit you immediately, but would probably hit you like a few months later. And hopefully it's not during the time when the market's picking back up again, like you said, when people are spending that stimulus money they got.
Exactly. So it's a really hard balance, but it's something that's important. So actually, for my clients, what I'm and potential prospects, I'm actually saying that I will offer the products or my services for free for the duration of this crisis, just to help them get their feet on the ground, and make sure they're doing everything they need to do, and then it's 12-month contract. So once that period is over and the economy's back up and running, then we can start charging again. Because for, like I said, for business owners, I understand it's very, very difficult to invest in long-term solutions when
Yeah.
there's such an immediate crisis right now. And even though SEO can take as little as a couple months, when you don't know what's going to happen 24 hours from now, that's a long-term solution. So it's absolutely chaotic right now, and it's hard for businesses to think past the next few days.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I also like the way you sort of segmented it a little bit, right? Like you said, you've got a small minority of people who are seeing like an absolute uptick in sales because it just happened to be at that sweet spot of, essential items and things like that. So obviously, if you're in that segment, I don't think anyone listening in is going to be worried. I
Yeah.
guess like the main part of this conversation should be on the second segment that, it's not really fully aligned, and maybe they've got some products that are still moving, but generally I think, sales are going down. So, they're worried about their sales, and we've just talked about cutting costs and things like that. In on a marketing side of things, like there's so many things you could be doing. Is there anything that you think they should be focusing on more versus others? So, for instance, we always think of SEO as long term. So would you say don't think about SEO right now, you should rather do this, this, and this because we don't know what's going to happen? Or like how would you approach it, like in a more sort of granular way?
So, I mean, the marketing ecosystem is so intertwined that everything really plays a role with each other. And even the companies that are seeing this big uptick, it's absolutely critical for them to keep pushing their marketing initiatives as well, because their competitors are also seeing a huge uptick. So there's this giant opportunity they have that they need to make sure their SEO is optimized. So when people are searching for subscription services or for online groceries or for whatever they need to do, they come up first, because as you may know, the search results from 1 to 3, you're getting a huge percentage of people clicking on those links, and from 1 to 2 is like a 50% difference. So to be in that number one spot, if you're Clorox or if you're Wegmans or something, it's enormous. So to be in that space, you have to do the same things that these other companies that are struggling need to do. And I think since the crisis right now is very chaotic from day to day, the most important thing they could do is make sure their site is fast and responsive and really optimized for every device, because you can do all the right keyword research, you can do all the content, you can write a great blog, but if someone clicks on your site and it doesn't load within a few seconds, they're going to leave in droves, and they're going to go to the next person in line. So I would say the most important thing someone can do really in any time, but especially now, is to make sure their site is well built and structurally sound from a technical standpoint, so it has a good user experience.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this conversation quite a few times this week already for this sort of coronavirus series, and one of the comments which I also got was things like, "Look, if you've got some downtime now and you don't have too much to do, this might actually be a great time to revise all your processes and make things more efficient." So that's like a really good example. Like if, maybe 2 weeks ago you were so busy fulfilling orders that you couldn't really think about your business. Well, now you just got an opportunity to think about your business and do those things which you couldn't really get to before, right?
Absolutely. And again, it's the people having the free time. If they don't want to hire a marketing service, or if they have to cut theirs, now would be a great time to take a crash course and learn the basics of SEO. And you can do a lot of this stuff on your own once you have time. But that's why business owners hire agencies and employees, because they don't typically have time. But now is a very, very unique situation where you can try to eliminate a lot of your costs and do everything yourself as much as you can until your business is back up and running, and then you can bring someone in again to help out.
Yeah, and I mean, and we were talking about this just before we started the show, but I think one of the rare good things, let's not say good things, but the rare positive stories from this whole crisis is that people are really coming together. It seems like everyone's sort of getting this feeling like, hey, this is everyone's affected. So just like you mentioned, I think that's really cool, by the way, that you offering your services for free for customers who are sort of concerned. It seems like there's a lot of people right now who are willing to help. So if you can just reach out to your network, I know Shopify, for instance, is doing like this 90-day free trial, which is crazy. So that could be, yet another thing they get into, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of these struggles with small business versus the big businesses they're competing with, is that it's tough because you want to play a role in helping the community and getting some good PR, like some of these major brands are doing, and transforming their factories into mask and scrub facilities. But the reality is that small businesses don't have factories; they don't have big budgets. Yes. So what they can do is shift their product messaging or create content relevant to this crisis, or offer free demos like you're talking about, or free months like I'm doing, just to think about how your product can be used to help people make it through this crisis. Like we're doing right now. You altered your content to make it surrounding this topic, because not only is it going to be helpful to people to get through it, but it's also the only thing people are thinking about. It's the only thing people are talking about.
Exactly.
So if you're not talking about this right now, your customer base isn't going to be interested. Even if you're a retail brand, people want to hear about this and how it can impact them. So, and there's no rule against e-commerce companies writing a blog post about how their customers can get through this safe and sound. So that's my recommendation to every company out there is create content surrounding COVID-19 and what you can do, and think about different strategies you can do to make the situation better.
Right. I mean, let's jump into that a little bit. So let's say that, I'm running an e-commerce store and my sales are not doing too well. I've clearly taken a hit. And, from a content perspective, like, are there things that, how would I actually go around trying to communicate, what my response is to coronavirus? So just to give you an example, I've seen some really nice examples of merchants where they put this like banner at the top, front and center, saying how are we affected by coronavirus, and then they've got all these details like is a shipment going to be delayed, or like how are they sorting out the supply chain to make sure that there's no risk of getting sick and things like that. But have you seen any other examples like this where people are using content intelligently just to sort of address the primary concerns visitors might have on their site?
So I have seen stuff like that, and some good and some not so good. So I think the important
Let's
thing
talk about both.
yeah. So I think the good ones are writing content relative or relevant to your customer base that they actually care about. Like you're talking about, if they're worried about shipments and they might be contaminated or something, talk about how you're keeping it safe, how you're keeping the product safe, how you're keeping the shipments going, all the things you're doing that's going to help your end user. What I've seen is not resonating well with people is when people talk about what they're doing internally to keep their employees safe. Like, yes, that's great, but I don't care. Like,
yes.
Thank you, Mercedes, I understand you're keeping your facility safe, but that means nothing to me. Like, you have to create content that is actually going to be helpful to your users.
I think the worst one is when they send you these emails. Like I think I must have received like 20 of them with nothing useful. All it's saying is we really care, really care, really care, and it's like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, exactly. I understand. Like, good for you that you're trying to keep your employees safe, but what is this email for? Are you just trying to like get a high five from me? Like, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, one of the keywords which I've really sort of seen thrown around, and I really I agree with it. It's like this idea of empathy. Like, I mean, I think the new kind of marketing has always been to be more empathetic and be more authentic and try to like really speak with your own voice rather than corporate speak. But it seems like now more than ever, you really need to sort of like try to put yourself in the shoes of your customer and try to figure out like what is it that this person is worried about and how can I actually address it, rather than going to this, like fluffy kind of talk, which doesn't mean anything at all, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be something that's really, really valuable and that'll drive people to your site. And then further down the line, if you have this podcast or a blog post that does really, really well during this crisis, it'll help your SEO in the future, and it'll also increase your brand awareness and bring people in. And if you're creating content that'll help people, even if you're like if you sell backpacks, when they comes time when they want to buy a backpack, they'll remember and they'll come back to you.
Yeah. I mean, so now we've just sort of talked about existing small business who are already selling online, and clearly there's a lot of stuff that they can do already to make use of if they have downtime, then go train, go make your site better. But if you are selling more, then definitely keep pushing on your marketing. But there's this other segment of small business that's coming up very fast, which are all these small businesses that didn't sell anything online and have suddenly woken up to this new reality that the only way they're going to sell anything is now online. And so there's almost this huge rush now of new e-commerce sites coming up. So how would you if you were talking to somebody who's thinking about this and they've thought, well, heck, what am I going to do? I need a site right now. What would you say to them? Like, how would you sort of guide them through this thought process? Because e-commerce is like a totally different world to these guys.
Yeah. It's going to be, it depends on the industry. If they're in a competitive industry, that's going to be very, very tough. If they're, if they're selling sneakers and then now they need to come on and compete with Zappos
Mm-hmm.
and Nordstrom and all these places, it's going to be really, really tough. And I would recommend you have to, that first of all, first and foremost, you need to have a site that's well built, that's fast, that looks good, that's easy to navigate. That's the first thing you need to do. But once that's in place, then you really need to go after specific niches. So if you're coming up in this time, smaller the better. So when you're doing your keyword research, try to find specific product. Like there's always the classic sneaker example that if you just go for sneakers, you'll never get it. But if you red dragon sneakers with white laces or whatever you're selling that's unique, you
Right.
have to really go after that because that's the only chance you'll be able to rank organically in a quick amount of time. Other than that, it's just covering all your bases and just I would urge them to have patience because if they have a budget, I would also recommend boosting that SEO organic performance with some paid advertising to try to get in there. But if they don't, if they're a very small business, if they're a small business, they're just trying to crack into the e-commerce, they need to have the upfront cost to start a web store and start a website. And then it's just keeping your costs down, doing as much as you can to limit that, and then just having patience and doing the full SEO scope as quickly as possible. You might want to take the process from keyword research to content generation to the site being built well over a course of 4 months and try to just cram that into a month to sort of accelerate that. But it's really going to take time and patience.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to that sort of tricky balance, right, between cutting cost. Because now we're talking about people who've probably seen their sales drop to zero because they can't even open the store. And seeing a pretty sizable investment really to get like a well-functioning site out. So I guess, like you probably do need to look at your finances and see. 'Cause I don't think anybody can say how long this period's going to last. I think, someone saying like, I think I heard Trump saying it's going to be okay by Easter. I just don't see that. But so I guess like the thing which people should do is really think about like how much staying power they have in terms of cash flow and then try to use that wisely to try to survive, right?
Yeah, and it's a risk reward thing. So how much do you want to leverage debt to stay afloat and build this out, and what is going on in this stimulus package? How can that impact their business? I haven't seen any details coming out exactly how it's going to work. I don't know if you have, but there's got to be. I can't imagine there won't be something that will help small businesses significantly because the government can't shut everything down and then not help. I mean, I just can't see a world where that happens. So. I mean, it very well could. I don't want to say, I hope there's not a world where that happens. So there's got to be some sort of relief that's coming. So if you want to leverage that stimulus package or leverage that somehow to really stay afloat, or if you want to take a step back and if you can just sort of weather the storm and try to come back in a month or so when the country reopens.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen a similar story in many countries. Like I know in the UK they're doing a big stimulus package. I know many countries in Europe are doing the same thing. Like in Asia, Singapore just talked about it as well. So wherever you are in the world, I think that's a really good point. Just go look at what the government has already announced and looking to do, and try to find other business owners in the same board as you and try to see like how you can use it for your benefit, right? Because I guess the better you are at knowing what you can do and benefit, then at least the more certainty you'll have.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can get private investors somehow, that would also be ideal. But I know that there's at least $250 billion that's dedicated to small business loans. So in the stimulus package, so that would just definitely be something I would be looking into if you're trying to keep your doors open during this time, and then just really trying to figure it out, or hiring someone like me who will do it for free during this time. I'm sure there's multiple people that are out there offering crazy deals. I know there are for a fact that are trying to, and it's not like, it's not pure charity. It's a 12-month contract. So I understand that helping you through this time, we'll be able to help each other later. So these companies they're out here, they're trying to help and they're trying to grow themselves. So everyone, like you said, is working together in a community so we can try to uplift each other and everybody get through this.
So, we've talked quite a bit about like the short-term impact, and it's really important. So hopefully everyone listening in has sort of an idea now on what they should be doing for, let's say, the next 2 or 3 months. But, we talked about how this has been such a big change in terms of our behavior. And I think it's fair to say that e-commerce is going to be very different 6 months from now, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how do you see it? Like, what's your view on what we can expect in the e-commerce industry, say 6 months from now or 12 months from now?
Well, I mean, the market in the world is changing so fast that it's hard to predict the actual timeline. So when we look at in the past, so when you see the crash in 1929, it took 3 years to recover from. So this time, it could take 3 weeks or it could take another 3 years. So, but what's definitely happening is people are losing their jobs. Like 3.3 million people lost their jobs last week. So
Hmm.
I think the biggest change in e-commerce is going to be a big shift away from luxury brands to that middle lower tier affordable brand that isn't necessarily Gucci or Prada, but it's still a solid product. So there's a really big opportunity for affordable retailers. But the thing is, they typically don't have the cash reserve of the big players as well. So when you look at the advice to give them and what you see is going to happen, I think it's the same we've been talking about, is keeping their costs down, but keeping their marketing strategies alive, because there's a lot of money to be made out there. And I think there's going to be a big market for people that are looking for more affordable products versus these luxury brands that have seen success in the past.
Yeah. Another thing which, we talked about just a little bit earlier is that um, we're going to see an explosion, right, of like people who haven't done e-commerce before, and they're all sort of going to crowd the market even more. So it sounds like your marketing efforts and building your own voice is going to be even more important than it is today, because you're going to just have so much more competition for pretty much every category you can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to imagine that building a site and having good SEO can be even more important. But like you said, it is, because there's going to be even more people doing it, even more products that you're having to compete with on top of Amazon, which is running the world right now. They're actually
Hmm.
having to forced to stop delivering products people want, which is insane.
I
Um,
know. Weren't they hiring like 100,000 more people or something like that? It's just unbelievable how much they're
it's
growing.
crazy. Yeah. There's Amazon, Walmart, all these convenience stores, pharmacies. They're hiring people by the thousands, and they still can't fill the demand. So it's an unprecedented time, and like you said, there's going to be more demand than ever when the market comes back, and just it's more critical than ever to have your site optimized.
The other thing which I sort of take a lot of comfort in is that it does look like there's a lot of sentiment right now on people wanting to buy from small business. I've seen, like for instance, Shopify, they released this feature for people to have gift cards on all the plans. It's just that the demand is there, but right now it's going to all like the large mega corporations. So if the
Yeah.
demand is there and it's going somewhere which is not small business, I guess then the question is like, how does small business fight back? Like, how do you reclaim all that demand and try to have it? There's nothing to stop people. Like right now, everyone's cleaning out the supermarkets, but surely it must be possible that the local butcher down the street is going to get a piece of that as well, because they probably have really good quality meat.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that people are doing it now is, if you're one of those butchers, if you're somebody, you just sort of have to work within the, hold on. Can you give me a second? I gotta grab some water.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Too much talking fast.
Yeah. I get a little overexcited. So we're talking about how small businesses can compete with big ones.
Yeah, like how can they fight back,
So
right?
the reality is, you sort of have to work within the confines of these big businesses. So for the butcher down the street that's trying to compete, you need to partner with these mega corporations like UberWorks or DoorDash or some of these delivery services that can already have the infrastructure in place for you to get those customers, for you to get these delivery services you need.
Yes.
So, and for small businesses, that's like partnering with Yelp and partnering with Angie's List and all these places that people are looking. So when someone searches for a gardener or a roofer, they're going to still stay on the first page of Google. And the way to get in front of their eyes is to partner with Yelp or someone who's has these lists, and then optimize within. So there's search optimization within your site, and then there's also optimization within your profiles. So Google My Business, Yelp, Angie's List, all these places have profiles that you can edit and you can make better and you can improve. So it's going through the best practices within their platform to boost your business that way.
I like that. So you're sort of taking on a more collaborative approach there, which is you're saying it's not like an us versus them kind of thing, but it's like, well, how can we like fill in those gaps which even the big businesses probably need.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to compete with big business. So the best way is to work within those confines, and also, like we talked about, finding those smaller niches where you can get your product out there and get those search results in from different long tail keywords that people can find your site that way, and also just posting it out to relevant subgroups, Facebook groups, Reddit groups, Quora answers, getting your content out there however you can, and then just building out that really, really good content that so it has a longer tail than some of the ways that if you just post it out to all your followers and all your email subscribers, you'll get a spike at the beginning, but that'll be your existing audience. So the goal is to do that and also build your new audience. So finding ways to rank your content, and also finding ways to partner with those big businesses so you can get some of those eyes that way.
Yeah, so I really like that, because you're talking about sort of like a more long-term approach. So you collaborate with big business to sort of fulfill that short-term kind of goal, but then hopefully you can build a relationship with that customer and have them come directly to you in the future, right?
Absolutely. So that's why it's so important to convert that customer when they visit your site, and make sure you get their information so you can keep them in your ecosystem. So you can keep them interested in your newsletter, interested in your blog, interested in your new product launches. And it's also just, again, circling back to constantly delivering them things that they want to see, that the value they can get from your content, and that will keep them coming back. You just keep pushing out new products and don't give them any relevant content, then they're not going to be interested. It's sort of like what your company does. When you go to a page and they see what is important to them, it increases the conversions, however, tenfold or more. So creating content and segmenting your lists on the back end to make sure that they're getting what they want to see and what's important to them, is going to create that long-term value.
Yeah, I really love that, especially because you're like being so collaborative there. I mean, just from hearing what you said, it seems like you, like anyone listening in, all of these stories, that you don't need to feel sort of overwhelmed or like depressed that, oh, like, why are the supermarkets selling so much and I'm not? Maybe if you say it another way, that's actually an opportunity that like you can actually help them, because even the big businesses are struggling, even if it's struggling with coming up with demand, like Amazon having to hire new workers. Well, if you can fulfill something for them, then that means a revenue stream for you, right?
Absolutely. And these big businesses, they just want to make money and fill demand as much as they can. So the challenge that some people might face is really getting in front of them, getting it to a decision maker. If it's not something like DoorDash where you just have to sign up. So if you're trying to partner with the supermarket or big corporation, it might be a challenge to get in front of them and say, hey, my value or my product can provide value to your product. But it's just something that's a worthwhile task and definitely worth going after.
Yeah. Well, Richard, I think this has been a really good conversation. I really love how positive it's been, and I hope anyone who's listening in is sort of feeling the positivity and thinking that it's not going to be that bad, and you've got some practical advice. Obviously, it's very, very tough times for everyone, but I think we've got some really solid advice here on how to navigate the next few months. So, Richard, I'm sure people would love to get in touch with you if they have more questions. Like, how would you recommend they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can reach out on the site at AcerSEO.com, or they can email me directly at richard@AcerSEO.com. And then I'd be happy to talk to them and give them, a free full site analysis and work with them however I can. And yeah, just stay positive out there. It's going to pass, and we'll all get through this together.
Amazing. Thanks, Richard.
It was great talking to you.
You're still here, which means you definitely enjoyed that conversation. This is a special COVID-19 e-commerce miniseries to help small business merchants out there get prepared. We're doing a lot more of these, so be the first to know whenever there's a new episode. Just follow DataQ, that's DATACUE on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Stay safe out there, everybody. Till next time, this is Sharam.